Hi everyone, welcome back to part 3 of our budget 2024 analysis special of the Discourse Education podcast. And my name is Chung. I'm the general paper H2 history and O levels English teacher here at the Discourse Education, and we are going to round up all the other bits on the budget 2024 statement. Yeah, so in this series of videos, what we are doing is essentially breaking down, all the announcements within the budget statement in itself, using the perspectives of H2 history, general paper, and H1 or H2 economics. Yeah. So for this podcast, typically what we do is we would break down, current affairs for students in Singapore taking the A levels, specifically the A levels general paper, and then we break it down for them, right, and pitch it at a level, for their own understanding, right, so that they can use it as examples in their essays or, the application questions in the general paper AQ component in itself. So yeah, we're finally at part 3. This will be the last part of the series analyzing the budget 2024 statement, and let's dive into it. All right, here we go. So again, if you are interested in finding out the details, the full details of budget 2024, I would recommend you checking out a couple of things, right? Either go and watch the full budget video, the link will be in the description. Go and read the statement, likewise the link will be there. And of course, recently CNA did a special with DPM Lawrence Wong where he answers questions on the budget in itself. So I would recommend checking that video out as well, right? Or alternatively, you can check out our previous 2 videos on the budget analysis where we break down the previous components that we're not going to break down today. So I would highly recommend, at the very least, going and find out, I guess, the key points of the budget 2024, right, so that you can get the necessary context for whatever that we are about to discuss today, and even for the other 2 videos as well. So here we go. All right, the part that we are going to talk about here, first of all, is on the policies related to helping the retired population in Singapore. So specifically your seniors and your elderly. All right, and this is where things get really very interesting, because first things first, all right, the government is going to increase CPF contribution rates for seniors aged 55 to 65 by a further 1.5%. Alright, so what this means is that business costs are going to increase again, but it is done for the sake of, all your seniors and elderly, or at least those within this age range and those who are still working, alright, to get greater CPF contributions, and that would help prep them for their eventual retirement. And additional CPF transition offset provision for another year to buttress all your business costs, as I talked about earlier. All right, and of course, what this means is that 50% of each year's increase in employer CPF contribution rates for all these Singaporeans or PR workers that are employed, and that are aged 55 to 70. All right, so that's what the government is going to do. If you are interested, do read more by using this link. We will put the slides as per with our previous 2 videos on our Telegram channel, so please do subscribe to our Telegram channel and then get all the details there. All right, second thing, the government is going to raise the enhanced retirement sum, or the ERS. Essentially, there is a scheme in place, right, called the retirement sums under the CPF, all right, which is meant to provide monthly payouts for Singaporeans aged 55 and above in retirement, the ERS among all the retirement sums under this scheme provides the highest payouts. Alright, so that's the basic retirement sum, and I think there's one more, I can't remember its name, and of course the highest tier would be the enhanced retirement sum. Alright, the government is going to raise it even further. The full details can be found in this link as well. Alright, so please go and read that up as well. Okay, essentially by raising this, alright, what that means is that Singaporeans who choose to top up their enhanced retirement sum, they can get the highest amounts of monthly payouts from their own CPF. Alright, and this one was a big talking point. It garnered quite a huge reaction online when it was announced last week. Whether it's backlash, or rather whether it's a positive or negative one, it's both. Alright, and that is that those aged 55 and above will have their special accounts closed. So just for some context, okay, the CPF, or Central Provident Fund, right, is something that's mandatory for all working Singaporeans and for employers here as well. Alright, so employers have to contribute, I think, at least for workers below the age of 55 years old, 20%, alright, of their offered pay, so offered salaries to all those workers, alright, into the CPF accounts of all these workers. So there are 4 accounts in total, right? MediSave, the special account, the ordinary account, as well as the retirement account. So MediSave is meant for, you know, your healthcare bills, alright? Ordinary account and special account, okay, these two are basically, think of it as savings accounts. The only difference is that ordinary accounts, they provide more flexibility in terms of withdrawal of the money from that particular account. So typically what Singaporeans would do would be to use that to purchase houses, alright? And then the SA is meant for retirement, so it's a long-term savings account, and the difference between the two really lies in the interest rates, right? So ordinary account has lower interest rates in comparison to SA. But the thing is that if you put your money into the special account, you can't withdraw it. Yeah, at least until retirement. But the thing is that for those aged 55 and above, they are going to close the special account, right? And they are going to transfer the money in the special account of all these Singaporeans into their retirement account. That will be the 4th account, right? The thing is that the SA and the RA, they have the same interest rates, right? So I think, if I'm not wrong, it's hovering at 4 to 5%. But of course, please go and fact check that. And yeah, so the rationale here is a lot of Singaporeans are thus questioning, like, why would you do this, right? And we will break down the details further later on. Okay, so these are the CPF adjustments, all right, and enhancements of retirement schemes. So for instance, okay, the first thing is that the qualifying per capita income threshold for the silver support scheme would be increased from 1.8k to 2.3k, and quarterly payments will be increased by 25%. Alright, so in case you're wondering what this silver support scheme is, it provides, as you can see here, quarterly payments. Quarterly, that means, you know, each quarter of the financial year. Alright, so if let's say, you know, as I said previously, the financial year is April 1st to March 31st. Okay, that's one full financial year. Split that into 4. So April, May, June. 3 months, right? Every 3 months, seniors under this scheme will get a payout, right? So this scheme is really meant to support seniors who had low incomes when they were still working. Okay, and it is also for seniors who may not necessarily have that familial support for them. So the government, by increasing this, in short, is meant to provide more, how do I put this? It's meant to loosen up the eligibility criteria a little bit, right, by raising the threshold so that more people can qualify for it. Okay, and of course the impact, or rather the reason why they want to do that, is because of rising costs of living. And the matched retirement savings scheme, okay, is going to be extended to those that are aged 70 years old and above. All right, and the annual matching cap is going to be increased to $2,000 with a lifetime matching cap of 20k. All right, so what is this scheme? The scheme essentially entails the government matching every dollar that eligible seniors, contribute to their own retirement accounts. So for your CPF accounts, right, you can contribute into the separate accounts on your own and of your own volition, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be done by your employers, or in the case whereby you are self-employed, right? Certainly you can contribute on your own, because self-employed individuals do not receive CPF, so they have to manage that on their own. All right, so by increasing the matching cap, what that is meant to do is to incentivize more seniors to put more money into their retirement accounts. Okay, and of course the tax reliefs for all these cash top-ups would be removed, because if the government is going to increase the annual matching cap, that means they're going to spend substantially more, because as you can see here, it has been raised by a little bit more than 3 times. All right, now before we go on to the analysis, obviously, when it comes to the retirement account in itself, in the CPF, it has garnered quite a bit of debate, right? Simply on the basis that, whatever money that you put in there, you are not going to be able to access it at all, right? Or I shouldn't say you wouldn't be able to access it at all, because you do receive all the payments, the monthly payouts from that retirement account. It is more a question of the availability of liquid cash, because it's not like a typical bank account whereby if you want to withdraw money, you can just simply do it. Okay, you can't do that with the retirement account. And certainly the same thing, that is the same thing for your special account as well. All right, so what Singaporeans are saying, or at least some Singaporeans will say that, hey, I have been working my entire life, all right, I don't get the full pay, okay, because some of it goes into the CPF, and then you're not gonna allow me to withdraw it, right? So that means that money is lost, or at least some people will try to justify it in that way. I'm not saying whether or not that's the correct thing, right? I'm just trying to paint some context here, all right? But essentially it's a way to, for the government to help manage the retirement needs of the elderly as a whole. Okay, so next thing, the Majula package. This one, it was announced in the National Day rally. All right, so for some more context, do go and watch the National Day rally, all right, or simply just read it here. Okay, that's what the government is planning to carry out in this current budget. All right, specifically what the government will do would be to implement 3 things. Okay, earn and save. So seniors, or young seniors even, that are earning up to 6k a month, they can obtain a yearly bonus of up to $1,000, so additional money for them. All right, one-off retirement savings bonus of 1,000 to 1.5k for those with savings below the basic retirement sum under the basic retirement scheme. All right, so the government is literally giving them $1,000 to $1,500 under this particular scheme here, which is related to all the retirement schemes that we talked about earlier. All right, and of course, one-off MediSave top-up, $1,500 for young seniors that are less well off. The rest of them will get $750. So this is on top of the further MediSave top-ups that we will talk about in a bit later on. All right, so it's literally cash infusions, right? Or I shouldn't say cash, but monetary infusions into all these CPF accounts, so that would help, enhance the retirees or young seniors in this particular case, retirement needs, healthcare needs, so on and so forth. All right. Now, this one is particularly interesting because what Lawrence Wong is saying here is that the modular package will be paid for through this particular fund. All right. So the government estimated that the lifetime cost of this entire policy would be $8.2 billion. And they are immediately setting up a $7.5 billion fund at the moment. Okay. With future projected investment incomes making up the shortfall. So that means they would go and through various means, right? Let's say using the sovereign wealth fund to make investments so as to make up for the shortages here, all right? And the rationale, as DPM Wong pointed out, is to make sure that the future generation is not penalized, all right? Yeah, because if we keep up all this spending now, without managing the financing of it, right, then the future generations will definitely pay for it. So yeah, moving on from that, we have the enhancements of the Age Well SG initiative. All right. So what is this? Essentially, the Age Well SG initiative is a campaign that the government is undertaking. All right. With actual substantial moves being made, obviously. So the creation of active aging centers, increasing, assisted living options, and expanding the network of all those active aging centers, all right, while upgrading current amenities to, accommodate more seniors. So we are talking about things like, walkway ramps, right? Talking about things like more wheelchair accessible buses, so on and so forth. Okay. But what this initiative really is about, at the core of it, is that it is meant to tackle social isolation. So we did talk about this in a previous part, right? Seniors, when they live alone, the potential for the social isolation is very, very high. So in which case, to encourage them to be more active in the community and to be able to live independently, all right? Because if let's say you have seniors with, health ailments and so on and so forth, then they're gonna need geriatric care. That means long-term care for diseases or problems related to old age, right? So the Age Well SG initiative is meant to expand all these things even more to help all the seniors in Singapore, all right? So moving on from that, dealing with healthcare costs, which is in relation to the aging population, the problem of aging population in Singapore, right? Certain healthcare enhancements, okay, so all adults aged 21 to 50, they're going to get a top up of $300 to their MediSave accounts, okay? So the MediSave, in case you're wondering what that is, it is the first way to pay for your healthcare costs. All right, think of it as co-paying. All right, just that it is ultimately still your own money, obviously, because you work where employers make a CPF contribution. They also partly contribute to your MediSave account. Okay, but what that does is that at the very least alleviate immediate costs. You see, I mean, of course, if you can afford it, you can afford the full payment, by all means knock yourself out, right? But if let's say, for instance, I want to extract my wisdom teeth, for example, all right, I can choose to pay for it with my MediSave. I mean, obviously, how much of it I can use and the regulations and all that, it differs between the options that you go for, right? So it depends on the clinic, it depends on the type of operation that you have to go through, so on and so forth, right? But MediSave is the first frontier, right? The first shield, in short, that helps you deal with healthcare costs. Okay, so if you're interested, In how that works, please go and read up more on it using this link here, okay? And of course, your various healthcare schemes, so Medishield, Life, CHES, so on and so forth. The per capita household income thresholds will be updated. What are the details? I think we have yet to get them, but eventually, right, depending on whether or not the budget eventually goes through, although I don't think that there's any real threat to that. Okay, the government is, in short, is going to increase their spending for healthcare, right? Healthcare subsidies by an estimated $300 million a year. Right, so if you're interested to find out more about all these healthcare schemes, please go and read up on them too. Okay. Now, in terms of the analysis using the GP perspective here, alright, the political analysis here is that obviously, once again, if you have the framework in place, alright, that framework of governments taking care of the short and long-term needs of the citizens, we see that at work here. All right, so there is greater governmental aid for elderly through all these various CPF contributions, and of course raising the ERS to help them manage their retirement needs. All right, and the Silver Support Scheme also helps elderly of lower income with familial support, and modular package as well. All right. But I guess, I don't want to say cynical, but from a more realist point of view, obviously it's meant for votes as well. And the rationale here is that, once again, the population of this country is aging. So the largest voter base, or the largest voter bases, will be the elderly generation. So all these, at the end of the day, yes, the government is meant to help people, but when it comes to the politics side of things, this is also meant to achieve more votes for them and secure their positions in the elections itself, right? I'm not saying that that's necessarily a bad thing. I'm just saying that that's how democracy works. Yeah. Okay. So from the social issues perspective, all right, again, the main problem we are dealing with here is the aging population. So while the ultimate solution is obviously to try and encourage younger Singaporeans to get married and have more children, okay, to replace the national birth rates, that is a very, very long-term solution. That's number one. That's the first problem. Number two, the immediate issues, okay, of the rising costs of living will very greatly impact young parents' decisions, when it comes to whether or not they should have more children. Because if, let's say, we talk about the preschool education costs, yes, the fees may be lowered, right, as we talked about in the previous part, but if you have two kids, that's still a minimum, or let's say two kids 2 years apart, that's still a minimum of $1.3 to $1.4 thousand a month, and that's just for the preschool school fees, right? We still have yet to consider things like healthcare costs, okay, your vaccinations for your children, obviously daily necessities, all right, and so on and so forth. Okay, so because of that, the long-term solution would be somewhat limited in its effectiveness if we are talking about dealing with immediate problems, right? And that's not just for the young parents nowadays. We're also talking about the impacts of the problems on the aging population, okay, on the aging population, all right, because of rising costs of living, all right, for the old people, they are gonna struggle to deal with all these problems. So we want to mitigate that as much as possible, right? Of course, we are gonna have to provide more subsidies and so on and so forth to support all these, older populations. Okay. Now, for the rationalization of the CPF accounts and MRSS and so on and so forth, I don't see the big deal with this, honestly speaking, right? And this is just from my personal perspective, obviously, because the interest rates are the same. They are the same. The SA account for younger Singaporeans, the money that's in there can be used for certain investments, right? It can be used for certain investments. If you put it into the RA account, you can't do that anymore, certainly. But if it's for those that are 55 years old and above, because the closure of the special accounts for seniors are really only for those aged 55 and above, alright? What's the issue? Right? I don't really see many issues with that. And even then, you can argue that, hey, maybe some seniors might want to use that money for other investments. But this is where I'll go back to a very, very basic concept again, which is making trade-offs, right? So for secondary school students, if you are somehow watching this, you'll learn in SS that the government has to make trade-offs. So why would the government, right, in order to achieve a maximum amount of social welfare, right, why wouldn't the government do this, right? Yeah. And when it comes to all these measures to help the elderly, it reduces generational wealth gap. But I'm not talking about the wealth gap between the old and the young. I'm talking about the wealth gap between those, right, who in the past had to go out and work at a very early age because they couldn't finish their education, all right? Or rather, they did finish it, but they didn't go further than, let's say, O levels or A levels, okay? Because if you have those qualifications, the pay that you can command in today's economy, and especially when so many of these elderly are still working, right, it's going to be very low. So that helps to, okay, then I shouldn't call it a generational wealth gap then, but yeah, it helps them manage their cost of living, all right? So yeah, I personally don't see any issues with the rationalization of the CPF accounts, but certainly, that may possibly stem from ignorance as a whole, right? Because obviously I don't claim to know everything. I'm just trying to explain this as much as I can for A-level students, all right? So yeah, and if you rationalize the accounts, that brings down admin expenditures as well. So, oh well, anyway. But either way, the main thing here is to help mitigate the problems, or rather the potential problems that come from having an aging population. Okay, that's the GP analysis. For the Econs analysis, there's quite a lot of things. There are quite a lot of things to mine here, because all these policies obviously are related to welfare, right? So we are talking about welfare economics here, all right? So if we look at the Majula package, the HWL initiatives, all these things, all right, they are all meant to achieve greater Pareto efficiency at the end of the day. Okay, why? Because let's say the Majula package, right? As I said earlier, the way that the financing of it is structured is done in such a way that the younger generation will not lose out from it, so that they won't be on the back foot, you see? Not only that, okay, the increasing phenomenon of elderly isolation, that creates quite a lot of negative externalities as well, because we are talking about issues related to mental health problems and isolation and so on and so forth, okay? And the continued education and cultivating of all these age well initiatives and all that. All right. Yeah, I just realized there's a massive typo here. I will update the slides before I upload it in a Telegram channel. So yeah. So the continued education at the same time, as I said in the previous videos, yes, it helps equip Singaporeans with all these things, but at the same time, it also complements, right, all these healthcare and all these social welfare policies to ensure, as much benefits would be, as many benefits that Singaporeans can enjoy as possible. All right. And over here, infrastructure and amenities development provide greater marginal social benefits. Not just for the elderly, actually, it's also for the younger generation, because obviously, right, one day we are all going to get old. It's a fact of life, right? Three things in life are definite and inevitable: death, taxes, aging. I mean, the third one always changes, but you get what I mean. Okay? So, in providing greater marginal social benefits for the elderly, that also may potentially benefit the younger generation in the future as they grow older. Because all these infrastructural developments would help, deal with all those things. And of course, there's something that I've yet to mention, which is we also need to consider in relation to healthcare, right? The greater preponderance of lifestyle diseases. I mean, you are looking at evidence of that over here right now, right? So if more Singaporeans experience lifestyle diseases, okay, so in case you're wondering what lifestyle diseases are, there are things like obesity, right? Obesity, high blood pressure, so on and so forth. Okay, things that are related to living a sedentary lifestyle and so on and so forth. Okay, yeah. So I mean, obviously, as you know, Pareto efficiency is not possible, or any sorts of efficiency is not possible, and the goal of any economy is to approach it as much as possible, sort of like your curves approaching infinity. Okay, so the implementation of all these policies are meant to help approach that. There is, however, a very, very real potential of a wage price spiral, because prices of goods and services are increasing, right? Because of all the external shocks, as I talked about in our first video. And not only that, for the government to sort of like rebuild our coffers, we had to increase GST. And the increase in GST, by the way, also helps fund many of all these measures that are being implemented right now, right? And that's why, in the budget statement, I didn't mention this, but in the budget statement, DPM Wong, he said, hey, we manage a small surplus. A small one, but it was still a surplus, which is quite encouraging, and that was because of the GST increases. I'm not contending whether or not that's the correct thing to do, but that is the context, right? So, increase in GST to fund all these things, okay, but you have more subsidies, and therefore your Singaporeans have more disposable income, on top of all the other wage policies that we talked about in the previous videos, because wages had to be increased, right? Then Singaporeans would be able to consume more. So ceteris paribus, quantity demanded increases, what's going to happen to the prices overall, right? Or rather, in this context, if we are looking at it from a macroeconomic standpoint, quantity AD increases, assuming ceteris paribus, the prices are going to go up, right? Yes, GDP growth occurs, but then inflation occurs as well. which is why we also had to invest greatly in all the things that would increase productive efficiency, as we talked about in the previous two videos. So education, retraining, so on and so forth. Okay, so yeah, I guess this particular point would help for the econ students, would help for your evaluation. All right, now the next thing, and I think this is the last one. Yes, it's the last bit. Yeah, we are finally wrapping up our series on budget 2024. So yeah, national security and unity, right? The plan to improve unity. I'm just gonna linger on this slide for a moment and see if you can find that little Easter egg. Okay, here we go. SAF stuff. I am not gonna talk too much about the first bit because it really doesn't. I don't really want to talk too much about that. But additional $200 in live SG credits, more NS benefits, whatever that means. Yeah. But the other thing that's particularly interesting would be the establishment of a National Cybersecurity Command Center. So okay, I'm not sure if you do know about this, but we do have a cybersecurity, I guess a unit, right? The proper name of it is the DCO, Defense Cyber Organization, in Singapore. Okay. But now they are establishing a command center, and that's to be expected because of, you know, increased cybersecurity threats and all that as technology advancements become more and more rapid, and especially with all the investments in AI that we talked about in the first video. What's particularly interesting is its location. It's going to be established at the Punggol Digital District. So in case you are wondering what that is, alright, the Punggol Digital District, if I were to use an analogy, it's kind of like, you know, the attempts to set up a Silicon Valley in Singapore. It is a place that amalgamates, you know, innovation, work, and living, right? As you can see right here in this slide. Okay, so it is meant to attract all the big tech companies, right? And in fact, some tech companies have already begun setting up there. Obviously, the big tech companies that already have had headquarters here, whether or not they move over, that I'm not too sure. All right, but yeah, the National Cybersecurity Command Center is meant to coordinate cyber defense ops and compel innovation in cybersecurity. Okay, but yeah, I would encourage that you go and read up a little bit more on the PDD over here using this link. All right, in terms of the impacts of this and why the choice of this particular location is interesting. I'll talk more about it in a bit. Yeah, SAF stuff. I'm not gonna explain anything much else about that. Energy needs. This one, the reason why DPM Wong would subsume this under national security is because, I mean, simply put, if you do not have a source of energy, you can't keep your economy going, right? And your country will fall apart as a whole. I mean, just imagine for a moment, like imagine your house has had a fuse blown or something like that, and the power is out. Even if it's just for a few minutes, you know, the immediate panic is gonna occur already, because like, oh shit, what next? Okay, so to service increasing electricity demands, all right, in Singapore, you know, despite our yearning to transition towards green energy, which, you know, we are obviously investing in here with the establishment of a future energy fund, all right, it's a long-term project. Our immediate needs, as I said earlier, you know, are still not exactly being fulfilled. So what the government plans to do is to construct a second LNG pipeline to import, you know, LNG from Malaysia and Indonesia. Okay, so LNG is not exactly green, right? It's still considered a fossil fuel, but if let's say for the GP students, especially if you encounter questions related to debates on a need to service current economic development needs versus future environmental needs, yeah, this is a great example to use. All right, so okay, we already mentioned this. Moving on, when it comes to national unity, this is the one that I personally find the most suspect, specifically this part, but I'll talk more about it later on. Right, so extension of the charity's capability collaboration grant. In short, this grant was meant to compel collaborations between all the different charities. And what it does is it provides monetary support, you know, to improve their efficiency, as you can see here, enhance their governance, enhance charity capabilities. Enhancing governance just means making sure that, you know, all these charities are compliant with prevailing rules and regulations as established by the government, because obviously charity organizations typically are not subject to the same sort of like taxation laws, you know, as your typical for-profit companies. Okay, now this one, all right, that's quite interesting. The second one, also very interesting, because introduction of the overseas, you know, humanitarian assistance tax this deduction scheme. So for every cash donation that you make to overseas causes through certain selected charities, the government would offer 100% tax deduction. All right, the rationale for this, as DPM Wong said, is to encourage a culture of giving, to create a more compassionate society, and thereafter compel national unity. I don't really see how that would lead to national unity, but certainly on the compassion side of things, yes, right, I agree. For the national unity part, I'll need someone much smarter than me to come and explain it to me, right? Obviously, I'm not that smart, so yeah. Next one, our SG Arts plan. So this was a master plan that was implemented a few years back. All right. If you're interested in what it is, do go and read up on it. There would be a further investment of $100 million over the next 4 years. Essentially, think of this as an arts program to cultivate and allow the arts to thrive in Singapore. So we are talking about all the cultural products. Okay, so painting, performance arts, so on and so forth. Okay, and $20 million top up of One Team Singapore Fund and extension to fiscal year 2027. So what this fund is that the government would provide per dollar matching for donations to the fund. So if you donate $1,000 to this fund, and this fund is meant to help develop Singaporean athletes, all right, then the government will provide an additional $1,000 to it. So, yeah, the government is just injecting $20 million straight into this thing, all right. And not only that, they will expand the scope of the donations to include other sports, all right, like chokeball. Of course, the DPM Wong also mentioned, I think pickleball is another one. No clue what that is. But chokeball though, very very fun sport. Personally, I got to try it when I was 15 years old. So that will be like, oh my god, half of my life ago. Okay, existential crisis over, right? Yeah, when I was 15 years old, I got to try it in secondary school, and it's really quite fun. It's very fun. Basically, how it works, it's kind of like handball, whereby you use your hand and then you pass the ball to your teammates. The ball isn't that big; it's about this size, thereabouts, right? And how you score a point is you throw it against a net that's not too big as well, Alright, it's maybe about 60 centimeters in length only. About this size, essentially twice the size of a typical laptop screen, maybe, or slightly bigger. Okay. Of course, I'm not saying that that's the entire net size. Because the entire structure obviously is much bigger than that, but the net itself where you are allowed to go and score your points is about that big only. And what you want to aim to do is to bounce it off the net, and then if the ball hits the ground, then that's how you score a point. Very, very interesting game, very fun game also. You know, I tried it during my PE classes when I was 15 years old. Very, very grateful to my PE teacher back then for exposing us to all these sports. Yeah, so the expansion of the scope of all these donations, right, is meant to include all these things, as well as sports care, which I think is a very important thing as well, because it provides opportunities for the differently abled and seniors to do more sports, and most importantly, at-risk youths. Okay, yeah, personally, I find that quite important. Okay. I mean, if you have seen our website values and what we aim to do, you would know why. Okay. But the analogy here I would use would be Slam Dunk, the manga. If you have read it, or if you have seen the anime, which I would definitely recommend that you go and check it out, because, okay, this is just my personal opinion. Slam Dunk is the best shonen manga ever. Alright. Yeah, you have a tearaway kid becoming enamored with the sport of basketball. So because of that, that's why he has a goal, and then he worked hard towards that goal, even though he's a massive idiot. So I mean, it's typical of shonen manga protagonists, right? But yeah, so I would recommend you go and read up more on these two. Okay, the One Team SG Fund and the Sports Care. Alright, or Sportscast, sorry. Yeah. Okay, so now to the analysis. From the political point of view, the reason why I say the location of the National Cybersecurity Command Center is very, very interesting is because, okay, obviously the government didn't say this, but we can somewhat infer, right, that the Pongo Digital District essentially represents the next phase of Singapore's development as a smart nation and smart city. So if you're wondering what the smart nation framework is, please go and search that up. But in short, it is just turning the entire nation into a smart nation. And by smart, I don't mean like IQ smart. I mean in terms of digitalization of our economy, so investing in new age technologies and infrastructure and so on and so forth. The PDD is meant to spearhead further technological advancements in our smart nation plan, alright? Because that place is where all the R&D occurs. That's where, you know, companies, right, tech companies and other, you know, companies would set up there and conduct cutting edge research, like really exploring the new frontiers of technology kinds of research. All right, obviously when it comes to the research into all these kinds of new technologies, okay, there will be a lot of, you know, desire, I guess, to protect the intellectual properties there. So the location of this cybersecurity command, right, is not only meant to tap into that ecosystem right there, right, so they can collaborate with all the other private enterprises that may be doing such research into cybersecurity, but I surmise also it is also meant to act as a sort of like defense, you know, of the Pongo Digital District in itself. So as you recall earlier, we said that this is meant to coordinate cybersecurity defense, cyber defense ops, right? So by placing it there, okay, the place that is most likely to draw heat in terms of cybersecurity threats is basically a form of deterrence. Okay? Because it is crucial infrastructure, and I don't think that the government made this decision willy-nilly. Right? Because if you are talking about placing the National Cybersecurity Command, then there are many potential places to put it. Alright, certainly. But why choose the Punggol Digital District? Yeah. Okay? And of course, the Future Energy Fund, it aids in our transition to adopt green energy, right? And it ensures national security because, as I said earlier, you don't have energy, your country is screwed, right? So from the economic analysis within the context of GP, okay, if you want to explain it in layperson terms, Future Energy Fund and the PDD create jobs. Yeah, they create jobs, all right? But of course, to create jobs, or rather to take on those jobs in the first place, the human capital has to be developed. Because for the PDD, for instance, as I said earlier, if they're going to be doing research into cutting edge technology, right, then the labor over there has to have a certain level of, a training or education, right? Because we are talking about very, very cutting edge stuff. So that's why, again, you see quite a bit of synergy now that we have laid out everything between all the policy measures within the whole budget in itself, right? A lot of government spending is geared towards ameliorating cost of living and compelling innovation. So the compelling innovation and re-education part, it fits with all these future plans that the government has over here. Yeah. Okay. From the cultural analysis, this one is more geared towards the SG Arts Plan and the One Team Singapore thing. So sports in the context of GP can be subsumed under culture. It can be. For instance, okay, so culture, obviously, when we talk about culture, it is the manifestation of a community or society's, traditions, values, norms, and behaviors, right? When we talk about arts, they are the manifestations of those cultural norms and values. Okay, it just depends on what, the medium of expression is, right? So it can be a painting, a piece of painting, can be music, can be whatever, okay? Sports, the reason why it can be subsumed under those definitions is because of the population's identification with that sport in itself, right? Because sports at the end of the day is, definitely a question of like skill or whatever. But why is it so important, to mankind in general, right? So if we point out a few examples, American hen egg is very important to the Americans. Football is considered almost a religion in certain parts of the world, right? So we talk about South America, football is almost a religion there, and other forms of sports as well, all right? Rugby, for instance, so on and so forth. Okay, yeah, so when we fund all these programs and all these projects, it is meant to cultivate national identity. The reason why I said that it is quite suspect is because the year that this thing was rolled out, the government put funding for the art of Charlie Chan Hock Chai. I won't comment more than that. So if you're wondering what that is, do go and look it up. It is a graphic novel, in short, right? But do go and look up the art of Charlie Chan Hock Chai. And this was in 2017. Okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna comment more than that on this. So from the economic analysis point of view, all right, obviously again we see yet more fiscal spending here. Okay, the future energy fund, all right, it provides funds to help deal with transitional pains, so things related to structural unemployment, a need for retraining and re-education, all right, because as we shift away from fossil fuels, those jobs will become obsolete. I've explained this in the previous videos. Arts investments, it offers some form of diversification. Why I say some is because we already have our key sectors that provide us with a comparative advantage against other countries. So like finance, semiconductor niches, biochemicals, right? Water technology, you know. So things like that, and of course our knowledge-based economy things, right? And arts, as you saw earlier, one of the aims was to create a creative economy. So yeah, some form of diversification, I guess, when it comes to the production of certain goods and services related to performance arts as well, right? Although yeah, I'm not gonna. Okay, arts investments also improves equity, right? Because you are providing more access to all these products to the masses, you know, and public access to arts products will increase, right? And that will also ultimately improve the social welfare. So because I mean, consumption of all these products, it adds more value to your own life, right? Because all work and no play makes whoever a very, very sad person. So yeah, and finally, tax deduction schemes. All right, so the overseas humanitarian assistance, as well as the One Team Singapore Fund, it is a Pigouvian style of subsidy, right? So in case you're wondering what that is, please go and look it up on your own, because as I said at the beginning of the first video, the assumption is that you know all the technical jargons for the H1 and H2 economics analysis. So if you are not sure what this is, go and look it up, alright? At the same time, it also encourages greater compassion and compel greater national unity, which leads to positive externalities in society as a whole. Okay? So yeah, that will be that. We are finally done with all our budget videos. Yeah, I hope this was, this provides more context for the A-level students in Singapore, and I hope that all the explanations here would help you in your understanding in terms of like how to make use of all these examples in your essays. And yeah, if you found this video useful, please share it with your friends. If you'd like access to these slides, subscribe to our Telegram channel. Okay, the link is right there, as you can see. And of course, if you are looking for further help, right, for the subjects of H2 History, General Paper, and O-Levels English, please call us at this number, right? Or to get more details, please visit our website. And yeah, we offer free trials, as I said, with 0 strings attached. So yeah, that'll be it for this week's the Discourse Education podcast. Yeah, it's the biggest project we've had to done for the podcast since we launched it. Yeah, you can expect not seeing any such a project anytime soon again. Unless we do come into more resources to expand our team here, but that's not the main reason, or that's not the main sort of like thing that our business offers. All right, so yeah, hope you learned something. All right, if you have a question, do submit a question using that link, and that will be it for this week, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.